day. Top of the morning to ya. Hey, when you were little, did you ever try to do different accents and pretend you were from like an exotic place like Ireland or Australia? Or like, did you ever pretend so much that you hoped people would just think you were from somewhere else? I did that all the time. I was probably so annoying. But anyway, that is not what this podcast is about. This is Everything's Relative, and I'm Eve Sturgis. This is actually about a worldwide phenomenon occurring right now. It's not political. It's not about vaccinations or border crossings or even global warming. It is about DNA tests blowing fucking minds. So that's what this podcast is about. Welcome. Today is a very special day. This episode is extremely special to me. I love them all, of course, but this one feels extra precious, and I will tell you why. From the beginning, way back years ago in season 1, I have said and been saying that I want to talk to people from all perspectives of the DNA discovery. I wanted to talk to people like me who find out that their father is not their father for one reason or another, but I also want to talk to fathers on both sides of the equation and what it's like for them. I have said I would love to hear from siblings who learn they have another brother or sister. And more than anything, I have been saying I want to hear from moms who have made the choice to lie about who the real father of their baby is. And such a mother has come to me. You may remember Kimberly from season 2. She is a horseshoe champion and the fine creator of our podcast tote bags. Send me a note if you want one. So she came to me. She told her NPE story of discovering as an adult that her dad was not her dad and her mom had lied about an affair. So go back and listen to that if you want to. And then at the very end of the interview, she just happens to mention that she lied to her own daughter about paternity too. And she wanted to tell that side of the story. And then she followed up with me about it. And then I messed up some of my scheduling. But she stayed persistent and has stayed in touch with me trying to figure this out. So all this to say, Kimberly is bold and brave and vulnerable and tenacious and the perfect person to shed some light on this side of the story. She's so freaking honest and straightforward. You'll see, it's amazing. I'm gonna play it now, and then I have more things to say. So I'll see you on the other side. A quick heads up, I want to put a trigger warning here for any listeners who might feel sensitive about adult content or and mental health struggles like suicide. Let me remind everyone that your own day-to-day experience is more important than listening to this episode. If you think it's going to be too hard, just go ahead and skip it. Okay. We are recording. Awesome. All right. Hold on. Today's challenge is that the dog is in the room. But it's because this is the coolest room in the house. Temperature coolest. So
it could be both. It's okay.
Yeah, and it's the coolest room. It's where everybody wants to be. So he is on the floor next to me. 5 degrees outside. So
how much?
95.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 95. Just too hot for a dog. It's too hot for a dog.
Yes.
He's allowed to be in here. But he can be a little wild. So we'll just see how it goes.
Okay.
All right. So, before we really begin, do you want your name used in this, or do you want to be anonymous for this one, or are you okay using your name?
The name is fine.
Okay. I didn't know if, like, from a different perspective, if you were feeling like more protective of yourself.
No,
Oh.
because I can't change anything. So it is what it is.
That's true. That's true. This is true. Okay. So something that I have been saying since I started this podcast, as you know, is that I would love to get everybody's perspective within the MPE dynamic. And one of the ones that feels the hardest to reach is the perspective of the mothers. Mom who has a child, gives birth, and then chooses or doesn't know, but is I don't even know how you would describe it. Either like is a part of the MPE problem, kind of, or like the NPE discovery, like it's part of the DNA discovery later. Is it them? So it's so amazing that you said like, hey, I really want to talk to you. Could not be more excited, even though it took us so long to finally schedule this interview. I swear I've been so excited that it was getting in the way of actually doing it, because this feels so important to me, that I was nervous about getting it right. So you're here with me today, and I'm imagining that you thought about how you wanted to tell this story or what you wanted to talk about. But
I have and haven't at the same time.
Okay.
Because, well, I mean, the story is the story, so it just is what it is. I'll tell it how it happened.
Okay, tell it.
Okay, so we have to go way back to when I was 18, which was 18 years ago, 19 years ago. Oh my. Anyhow, I had turned 18 and I was dating a guy who was 24, and he was my manager at the place that I was working. When I turned 18, you're like, woohoo, freedom. Well, I didn't really have freedom. My mother wasn't going to allow that. I was technically still in high school. So I moved out 8 days after I turned 18 in with the guy.
This will take care of it. That will totally take care of it.
Oh, yeah, totally. And that was in December, at the very end of December. So I think I moved out. It would have been right after New Year's. I ended up dropping out of high school in February because I just knew I wasn't going to pass. And then come April, I found out I was pregnant. I think I knew, but I had his brother's girlfriend wanted to go to a pregnancy center here in town because she thought maybe she might be pregnant. But somehow I got talked into taking a pregnancy test while there. And lo and behold, there I'm pregnant. So I go home and I tell him, and he's all sorts of excited. Mind you, he's 24. He already has 3 children. 2 from one mother and 1 from another. And the one from the youngest of them, I think at that point, him and that kid's mom, they had like just gotten divorced or something. It's been a while, so I'm trying to remember that. But he didn't have anything to do with the other 2 because the mom wouldn't let him.
Okay.
So anyhow, I find I'm pregnant. We tell his family. They're all kinds of excited. I go over to tell my mom, and she literally kicks me out of the house.
Not excited. Not the warm welcome. Okay.
No, but she calmed herself, and later that evening came over and talked to me. I would say about 2 weeks later, I was like, all right, this is not what I wanted. This is not who I want to have a child with, because a lot of really not okay things had happened, like lying and stealing from the company. And I'm like, I don't want to have a kid with this person. And it just so happened that when we moved catty corner on the exact same block from my mom. So when
I feel like only an 18-year-old would do that.
Yes.
Like, I'm out of here, but I'll be just right across the street.
Yeah. So when I decided that I was leaving, my family came and helped me get my stuff. And it just so happened that exact same day at that moment, he got in a car accident, and he kept trying to call because he was at the hospital, and I was trying to pack. And someone answers my phone for me, tells him what's going on. He rips the IV out of his arm so that he can try to speed race home to get there before I leave, which was incredibly apparent when he got there because there was blood everywhere. And I finally talked to him for a minute, but I was like, I'm leaving, da da da. I was 3 months pregnant at this time. And so I moved with my mom, catty corner. And for 3 months afterwards, he leaves a note on my car every single morning.
All right. Dedicated.
Yeah. In the meantime, during that 3 months, I met who is now my ex-husband, somewhat best friend. And so we got together. I was probably like 3.5, 4 months pregnant when we got together, and we remained together the entire time. He was there for the first kick. He was there when I had her, like not in the room, outside the room with my stepdad. And he just absolutely fell in love with her. And I mean, to be honest, if it hadn't been for her, I don't know if him and I would have ever made it to being married. Because he just couldn't give her up. He called her Snuggle Baby. From when she was in my belly, like he had a nickname for her. Now she's got like 20, but after I had her, we didn't call him dad. Him and I didn't live together or anything. And Autumn was about 3 months old when I ran across the biological dad. He was already with somebody else who was about 7 months pregnant.
Okay.
With his kid. And I tried to give him the opportunity to, be a parent. We talked for a while. I let him see her a little bit. And then I let her stay the night with him one night. Well, I thought all of that went well. But about 2 days after that, my ex-husband comes to my house. He is absolutely livid because Biodad had called him and told him that, I had been letting him come around and that his girlfriend felt like I was trying to get him back and that it was causing problems, da da da. Well, at that point, my ex-husband gave me a choice. Either he was going to be her dad or Biodad was going to be her dad.
Oh,
well,
I did not see that. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, neither did I. So, I mean, for me, that was a fairly easy choice.
Right.
Because, I mean, I have this nice, upstanding person, and then I have him.
Right.
And he hadn't made an effort, really, to be a parent. But this person had been here this entire time. So I was like, okay, well, it's you. Fast forward to when she was about 8 months old, maybe. Lo and behold, if I don't find out I'm pregnant again. One of the things I'm really good at is getting pregnant. And ultimately, him and I, we got married. And we waited until she was about 4 before he adopted her. That gave 4 years for this other guy to come forward and say, hey, I'm your dad. I want to be a part of your life. Him and the other woman got married and whatnot. I actually never we don't live in a big town, but I never ran across him. I'd run across his brother, and I kept in contact with his dad. Because, they were, his dad, he's a good person. Brother's a little shady, but that's okay. He was whenever he ran across me and saw Autumn, he was always polite. And, during this whole time, everybody in my family, everybody in my ex-husband's family, they're like, she doesn't ever need to know.
Right.
You don't have to tell her. My ex-husband didn't want to tell her. So we go through this, and then ultimately him and I ended up getting divorced when she was 7, I think. And that didn't change anything between him and her, to him and her, father,
And
daughter.
she has a sister that's like very close in age with her, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I have my son also, by my ex-husband. And when him and I separated, it just so happened that at that exact time frame, bio dad went to prison. All I know is that he got charged with multiple counts of internet stalking, breaking of the PFAs, and aggravated assault or battery. All in all, he got 8 years.
That was all between him and his ex-wife, him and his wife.
Yes.
He had been, okay. She was
but
the victim in the scenario.
Well, the assault was with some guy. The assault wasn't against her. It was against some guy that had something to do with her.
Right.
So and that's the part I'm like, okay.
But I mean, but the harassment and
that's all with her.
Was between her. Okay. I don't know why that detail matters. I was trying to imagine them in like being Bonnie and Clyde criminals together, and then realize that probably that's not what you were describing.
Well,
okay.
See, when you think about the 3 months worth of notes on my car, and then throw that in there, and you're like, oh yeah, okay,
right. He grips on. I believe we call that a pit bull.
He goes to prison, and I'm like, woohoo, I have relief. I don't have to worry about this for a little while. Because mind you, the entire time, obviously it's not going to be every day, but every now and then it pops in my head. Like the fact that, and if she ever listens to this, she'll kill me, but she drools when she sleeps. Like not just a little bit drools, drools. So did he. She has Tourette's, and it's not on my side. Tourette's is typically hereditary, but I don't know enough about his family to know if it's from his. Just little things like that. And so all these years, I'm thinking about it. And, should I tell her? Shouldn't I tell her? But knowing that the reason we didn't is because, I don't know if you want to call it unfortunately or fortunately, I had a choice. And her dad, the one she calls dad, he chose her.
Yeah.
And so, like, I never knew what the correct answer was. And then one day when she was 11, we were in the kitchen talking about my nephew, who was in a situation where he thought that my ex-brother-in-law was his dad, and we all knew that he wasn't. And we were talking about this, and I don't know, like something clicked in my head, and I'm like, this is the moment. And so I told her that, I needed to tell her something. And I took her to my room so that we could sit down and talk. And I don't know why I thought that at 11, this was a good time, but I don't know. Something said do it then. I told her. I cried way more than she did, because even now, I just feel horribly guilty. But at the same time, like, I have contradicting feelings, because I gave her the best dad she could possibly have. She had a dad who was present. Even when he was in the military, he would drive hours upon hours to come be a dad. He drove across the country to take my daughters to a father-daughter dance.
Oh, yeah.
But you know, she still didn't have the truth. She has, I think now she has 4 other siblings. And, oh, that just dawned on me why I felt an urgency. One of the kids in her class that year, his siblings are her siblings.
Yeah.
And he knew the truth, but of course Autumn didn't.
Right. Oh yeah, that'll bring an imminent feeling to the situation.
Yeah, and I had talked to the other mom. I knew why he wasn't allowed to be around those children, that kind of stuff. And I had asked her to talk to her son and, try to not say anything because I want it to come from me. And it did. And I explained to her everything that I knew about him, which unfortunately wasn't all that much.
Mm-hmm.
I told her that it wasn't that he was a bad guy. Yes, he's in prison. He's not a bad guy. He's just not a smart one.
Mm-hmm.
But that probably comes from me working in prison so long and knowing that people make mistakes and go to prison. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're a horrible person.
Sure.
So I'd like to say she handled that really well. She did in the short term.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 7th grade, so that would have been 5th or 6th grade.
Mm-hmm.
7th grade is when everything just went wowza. And she had a lot of mental health problems, and we put each other through the ringer, and it was hard. And she's never said that it's because of this, but I feel like it is. I feel it's my fault. I did this to her. I made it to where she felt different. Even if her dad doesn't feel differently, she feels like she's different. And for a young girl going through her teenage years, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
So when my DNA thing came along, she was 17 when mine came through. And
that's when you discovered, just in case anybody's unsure, but you discovered that you were an NPE.
Yes.
Yourself. And you can listen to your episode in my season 2, but I'll refer to that later. So you found out you were an NPE, and at this time your daughter is 17. So she's known, but her teenage years have been really hard. You're feeling very guilty.
Yes. So bless her heart, she felt like she understood. And to this day, she thinks that the situation is the same. And like when you just go at the basis of, I found out my dad's not my dad. Yes, it's the
right.
same. But I found out from a DNA test. I'm 38 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And she found out at 11 from her mom. It doesn't make either scenario any less challenging. I can't honestly say that I'd rather know at 11 versus 38. It's different. And so her and I occasionally spat over that. However, because I met my biological family, and I think she wasn't quite 18 yet, but I couldn't be a hypocrite because I had wanted her to wait until she was 18 to meet him. But I had done it, so I arranged it, and we went to the park, and I went with her.
He's out of prison at this time?
Yes, he got out 2 years ago, I think. There's no way I would take her to a prison.
I just want to make sure the park wasn't a code word.
No.
Like I took her to the park.
I took her to the park. We met him at a picnic bench or whatever, and they sat and talked for a while, and he oddly reminisced about him and I. But all in all, it went well. She has maintained a little bit of a relationship with him. I guess they go to lunch every now and then. That's the only one I've gone to. I left it to her after that. And I told her, if you need me, I'm here. He has been respectful of boundaries. But then, a few weeks ago, is the first time he met my grandson.
Because your daughter has a son.
Yes.
Right? Autumn is the mom now. Okay.
Yes. And that one was a little tough for me because I'm like, mine.
Mm-hmm.
you
that would be hard for me.
This.
Yeah.
This is mine.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to share. I have a hard enough time sharing her because everything in me says that he doesn't deserve her and all of her wonderfulness because she's amazing. But then I also have to realize it's not my choice. My choice was made years upon years ago. But I don't really want to share my grandson.
I think most people would understand that, and if they don't understand it, they will or would if they were grandparents. So I think that is a common sentiment among grandparents.
However, he is respectful. He has texted me and told me how well I did with her. To which my response was thank you, but it wasn't just me. I definitely have a village. And then he told me about meeting my grandson and how happy he was. And I was like, that's nice. I heard. But I didn't have a whole lot to say about that one, but that's just me being selfish. But I think I felt it was important that people hear this because with my mom, I'm not angry for what took place 38 years ago because she was a 20-year-old girl. And I knew that at 18, when I got pregnant with my daughter, I didn't know what was best. I did what I thought was best. And I still think it was best. She said that I had her entire family lie to her. And I did.
Right.
I can't say that's something I didn't do. I did. But I think I would probably do it again. Given the same circumstances. Because it's what made her who she is. And she's amazing. She's a pain in my butt, but she's amazing.
There's a special place for those of us who've raised teenage girls.
Oh, yeah.
I like to think.
It's an understatement.
Yeah, I think it's so important to think about and appreciate what options you had at age 18. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And I'm sort of speechless. I don't know. I didn't breathe for that whole entire time that you just told that story. And to be 18 and given that choice, it almost feels unfair that you were that was the choice you were given. And yet I think you made the best choice. I don't know. What? I don't know. I just accept that. I just feel like I understand you.
I gave her I thought what I was giving her was a family. And I did. For many, many years. Because had I gone the other way, who knows what would have happened, but I do know it wouldn't have been a family.
Right.
I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. Had I not gone the direction I went, I wouldn't have my other two kids.
Right.
Because, their dad wouldn't have been able to accept not being her dad.
Mm-hmm.
She was, even though him and I got divorced, they were raised with him and I as friends. And so they still got to have both of their parents. He comes over, like, I think this past year he came for New Year's, he came for Christmas, and I'm remarried. And,
Mm-hmm.
He's still a part of the family. He has another daughter as well. That's the same age as my youngest. They're besties. But with her biological dad, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
I couldn't have given her any of it.
Mm-hmm.
She got the most amazing grandparents because right after I had her in November, it was cold out, but I went over to his house. He still lived with his parents, my ex-husband, and
Right.
he was washing his car. And I sat down on this bench on their front porch. And I was really nervous about taking her over there because I just didn't know what his parents, like, they knew I was pregnant, but I figured they probably weren't so welcoming of it. Anyhow, his mom pokes her head out the door and she says, "Do you have a baby?" Because I had her pretty bundled. And I was like, "Yeah." And she took her from me, and I swear she never gave her back.
Yeah. Oh man, that just breaks my heart.
They are the most amazing people, and they love their little snug bug.
I mean, I'm just imagining being, even just having, like, not knowing what an 18-year-old girl like sort of looks like and acts like, and imagining one of my own daughter's friends coming over with like a baby in her arms. And I don't know. Oh, like it just, like, it breaks my heart in like 14 different ways. But
We
I
call
would
that
want
the
to hold that
guessing
baby
game.
too.
Oh, she was adorable and perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And she had just little wisps of red hair. And out of 4 kids, I have one redhead, and she's it.
Mm-hmm.
Firm believer, God made her a redhead and female so that certain people could accept her easier.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
I mean, she's always been the center of everybody's world. She's made sure of it because she just has that really outgoing personality. And I mean, she says she's not angry with me. I'm not going to say she has said she understands because luckily she's never been in that position. But I take a lot of the blame for things that, like mental health stuff, that type of stuff. One, not only is it genetic, and yay me, I've passed it on, but I also didn't help it any with the situation. But we're always going to look at the what ifs.
Sure.
We can't change any of it. I mean, I could say, well, what if I did go with him and, everything just went absolutely wrong? She wouldn't be who she is.
Yeah.
Life would be worse. Or she could be a doctor. Who knows? We'll never know. And so with her especially, I try really hard not to look at that so much unless she wants to talk about it. She's getting ready to meet his girlfriend. Oh, once he got out of prison, he had another baby. Yeah. So he has a child who is younger than my grandson. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just trying to remember what that makes. That makes
1, 2, 3.
His child is the uncle. The uncle is younger than his grandchild. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
That's fine.
So here soon, she's supposed to be meeting his girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
And on that one, I did ask her if I can go with her. I'm protective, very protective. And it's the mama bear in me with this person I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And she said I can. She doesn't mind at all because she's very much so a mama's girl. Even when she's mad at me, she can't, like, she'll forget she's mad at me because she wants to tell me this or that, and then she'll be like, "Oh yeah," like, too late. No take backs.
Mm-hmm.
But her and my ex-husband, they still have a great relationship, even though they're oddly a lot alike. They're both fighters, and having two fighters in the same place, you know, guess what? They fight.
Mm-hmm.
But she loves her dad, and he loves her, and right now it seems like everything is going well. She's forming a relationship with him. Unfortunately, his dad worked at the prison here locally, and he worked there when I worked there, and he got attacked by an inmate while I was working, and, like, I'll never forget the chopper coming in to pick him up because it was that severe. And so he hasn't ever been quite right since, because it gave him some brain damage. And so Autumn's not going to get the relationship with him that she would have had.
Right.
But he's still a good person.
Mm-hmm.
He is the one that I've kept in contact with all these years, and I would update and give them pictures, because I didn't feel like it was their fault, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But they also they understood that I couldn't have them around her. His bio dad's stepmom, so grandpa's wife, did my wedding cake, my gender reveal cake. It's a small town.
It's a small town. Let's revisit that. Yeah.
So I mean, I've never been rude to him. I didn't feel like that was needed. It wasn't necessary. I 100% shut him out for a while. And anything I could have possibly told her about him before she met him, I did. It's just, unfortunately, I didn't know a whole lot.
Right.
I never had a doubt in my mind who her biological dad was. Like, I knew. And I mean, I tried to think of ways to make it to where I didn't have to tell her. Like, maybe I can fake a blood test. Like, I tried to think of anything, but all in all, I mean, obviously I wasn't able to.
Right. But she still calls your ex-husband dad.
Oh yeah. She said that she doesn't think of her biological dad as her dad. She said in her mind he is just another person.
Yeah.
She doesn't talk about him a whole lot. And when she, like, last time she said something about him, she said that he'll text her, and, like, maybe the third or fourth text after she doesn't answer, she'll finally respond. Or as teenagers say, she leaves him on red.
Okay. Right. How is it for you as a mom who also is an MPE to read, I mean, I guess what I want to ask is, like, what I'm thinking about is that people in the groups online,
when I read the stories, when people are talking about their moms,
and people are just really angry at their moms. What's that like for you?
I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
If my daughter was that angry with me, even before I found out I was an MPE, I felt like I deserved it.
Mm.
Because everything, when it comes to her biological dad, she had zero control over. I'm the one that made all of those choices for her. And I realized that my ex-husband was obviously right there with me, but had I not wanted to do it, she was my child. And I could have said, no, we're telling her, or
Mm-hmm.
no, we're going to raise her with this knowledge. But I chose not to do that. And so if she wanted to just be beyond angry with me because of a life unlived, or for me having her entire family lie to her, I did do that. So it would all be justified.
Mm.
And all I could do is sit there and pray that someday she forgave me. So when I look at other people and they're angry, of course they're going to be angry, because there's so much what if behind all of this that we find out, or not understanding. And sometimes there's narcissism and, just mothers who, aren't empathetic. So people are going to be angry, but not every mom deserves anger forever. I was lucky that, you know, my daughter isn't still angry at me, and she never acted like she was. But I do believe that has to do with her age. But I think that anger came out in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
She tried to commit suicide 3 times.
Boy.
And ended up having to have, well, I call them vacation stays, which ultimately made her and I closer by the time it was done. But during it, I took 6 months off from work to stay home with her. And I think that was how she acted out her feelings. On top of being a teenage girl.
Right.
So when I read all of those, I get it. And then having been through it myself and being angry with my mom in my own way, I get it. The thing that I want, I guess, people in general to understand is that, like me, I was 18. I hadn't even graduated high school because I was that dumb. So I wasn't intelligent. I was making the best decisions I possibly could. I got pregnant at 18 because for whatever reason, I thought I was invincible. And surprise, I'm not. 4 kids later, I'm still not. And so, 18, you don't make decisions based on the future. You base them on the here and now.
Well, I wanted to interrupt you earlier when you said you weren't intelligent, and because I think it just depends on your definition of what was the smart choice, right? Like, this isn't. I don't know. Was it not it might be possible that a choice could be the right choice and simultaneously not the smartest choice. Maybe.
Well, luckily for me, like when I found out I was pregnant, never once crossed my mind to have an abortion or anything like that. So it was always, okay, I'm going to be a mom. I had another male friend who he offered to be her dad.
Okay.
This was before I met, right before I met my ex-husband. Because, I knew right from the start that I didn't want her to be raised with this person. And all this stuff just kind of fell in my lap. And, you know, when I was making those choices, I wasn't sitting there going, well, how is she going to feel when she's 18?
Right. Of course not.
How is she going to feel when she finds out she has 5 siblings?
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about the person in front of me, the baby in front of me,
Mm-hmm.
and what's going to happen tomorrow.
Right.
And so when people are that upset with their moms or whatever for the choices they made, I just wish that they would think about the fact that when we're that young, we're doing the best we can. Obviously, it's not all of us, but like with me, I did the best I could. And like with my mom, I'm not upset with what happened way back then. That had nothing to do with me. I was just a product. I was upset with how she handled it after I found out.
Right. Right. There's an important line to draw, sort of about the decisions that were made years and years ago, and the decisions being made presently.
Mm-hmm. And after I told her when she was 11, my ex-husband at the time was in DC. He was in the Air Force, and like obviously this wasn't planned. So after I told her and I got myself calmed down enough to make a phone call, I had to call him and tell him that I told her.
Mm-hmm.
Him and her never once spoke about it from the time she was 11 until the day before she met her biological dad. Because I told her that the only way I would introduce them is if she talked to her dad first.
Oh.
Like they both knew, the other knew,
mm-hmm.
but they never talked about it. And they still don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's just one of those things that they each know is happening, but they're not comfortable talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
He will if she brings it up to him, but I know that he probably doesn't. He has a fear, I think, of being kind of replaced. And the way I explained it to her was that she got something that most kids don't get. You know, her dad chose her. Mm-hmm. She wasn't just given to him and this is what you get. No, he chose her and he fought for her. That's how much he loved her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like every time she gets upset with him, because teenage girls get upset with their dads, that's what I remind her of. And we're not perfect and we're human. Even though we're parents, we're still humans and we make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't trade her for anything. She was probably the saving grace of my life, because I had some not so amazing friends way back when. And when I found out I was pregnant with her is when I got away from those people.
Mm-hmm.
She was my everything. And, you know, now I have 4 of my everythings, but she walks in the room and the whole house just lights up. She moved out actually a month and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was super excited. I'm like, we're going to get all this space back because, you know, she's chaos walking. And everybody's like, you're not happy about this. It's like, you just let me have this because I know that when it gets here, I'm going to be a mess. And I was.
And you were.
And I was. I stayed out really late the night before because I'm like, if I don't come home and I don't go to bed, it's not going to happen.
It's not happening, right?
But I came home at like 2:00 in the morning, and my 2, Autumn and my one just under her, were in the living room, and I made them snuggle with me while I wept like a 6-month-old. With them both hugging me on both sides, and me making the other one promise that she's never moving out.
Perfect.
And then the next day, after I made like, I don't know, like the 3rd trip to her new house with her stuff, she comes outside and she's crying. I'm like, oh yes. She loves me just as much as I love her.
Absolutely.
And so we stood outside her house in this neighborhood where the neighbors are probably looking at us like we're crazy, and we absolutely wept together.
Mm.
And the house is far too quiet without her here, and it is definitely taking some getting used to.
Mm-hmm.
I recommend you never let them leave. I don't like this.
Right. Yeah, what a huge shift. And I assume her did her baby go live with her too?
Yes, her and my grandson's dad and they all moved in together, and they have their little family, and it seems to be going well.
Okay.
It's what they needed as much as I wanted it and didn't want it at the same time. But you know, have you ever heard the rule that you shouldn't have two families under one roof?
No, but it sounds like a good rule.
Yeah, well, maybe it's
I didn't know it was official.
Yeah, well, it doesn't usually work out. No, he didn't live with us, but you know, Autumn and my grandson, they're a family, and now they have dad there too, and it's weird going to visit her in her house.
Right.
Very weird. I knock on the door and everything.
Yep, that would feel really weird to me too.
So all in all, I think it's turned out well. Hopefully it stays that way. But I have also left her space open.
Open door. Sure. Open door policy. It sounds like she's really lucky to have you, and that you have made decisions always with her best interest in mind, and like adjusted accordingly as life has changed.
I've tried. I mean, obviously we all make mistakes, but I've done the best I can.
I mean, that's all we can do, right?
So and I'm hoping that as a mom now, her being a mom, as he grows older, she'll understand some of the decisions I made. Because I don't think at this point she fully understands.
No, I can't imagine that she wouldn't have more realizations as she grows older as a mom.
I said, she's definitely a mama's girl.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for telling your story. I still feel sort of speechless because there's like sort of nothing to say. Like, it's kind of like what I asked you, like, do you want to hide, do you want me to hide your name? And you're like, it is what it is. And I kind of feel like, yeah, I was just here. Like, I'm just here to hear it. So you did it.
Yes. I'm just hoping it helps somebody understand something along the way.
I know it will. I absolutely know it will. And I think there's so much to be said about acknowledging it's just really complex. It's just acknowledging how complex these are. There's just no easy answer.
Well, I'm also kind of hoping that there are moms that listen to your podcast. Because, with, say, like my mom and I are different. Empathy hasn't always been her thing. And I firmly believe what's helped me with my own child is that I've tried to be understanding of her feelings. I've tried to take blame where it's due, and just be there, because at a certain point, it's not about me anymore. And I'm hoping that there are moms listening that, I don't know, maybe they haven't gotten that revelation yet. It's no longer about you. It's about your kid.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just think so much too. Is to me, I guess maybe this is just me, like my personal experience is just how much people feel alone in the experience. And to think of you being 18 and being alone, and to meet, it would just be amazing if all, I don't know what it would be like for you, but to me, and I imagine it would be amazing if all the not all the moms, but like if you met other moms who made that decision, could all commiserate about being 18 or being very young and feeling like you had no choices, and to just carry all of that alone your whole life is a lot.
When I was finally able to tell her, as guilty as I felt, it was so wonderful to not have to lie anymore.
Yeah.
She's the one that told her siblings that are my kids, but it was a weight that was just lifted because I hated lying. But I don't know anybody like me, like who has made that decision. It'd be wonderful to talk to somebody who does, who like would understand it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know anybody. I've never talked to anybody who did. And it's easy to sit back and look at it and pass judgment, but you just never really know what somebody's going through unless you're in their shoes.
Absolutely. You just never know. What I love about Kimberly's story is that she reminds me, listening back to it, that moms are just humans. So often, the case in our NPE stories is about like young humans making huge decisions the best that they know how. And of course, there are exceptions. There are, there are sociopathic narcissists out there, and they have lied and cheated and hurt people really bad without remorse. And that exists in the NPE community, of course. There are moms who aren't very nice and are not handling this gracefully and might deserve to be called bitches. That totally exists as well. But for every person like that, I just can't help but think there is one or more mothers, who was faced, with, or found themselves in between a rock and a hard place, and they chose what they thought would hurt less. And I think that Kimberly's story is a really excellent example of the complex simplicity of that idea. Time and time again, MPEs are frustrated and angry with the denial their parents are in about the decisions they made decades ago. Denial is huge. It's a huge theme in our world. There's so much denial and lying and covering up and forgetting. But I think the thing that I think is important to remember is that denial comes from pain. And I truly believe the pain of so many of our parents, especially our mothers, is shame. Kimberly and I had we had a lot of emails back and forth between each other. We tried to connect a number of times after we talked because she said that she had more to say and we kept missing one another and getting our time zones mixed up. And then she said, never mind, just run the episode. But I think the one thing that she really wanted to talk about was something that's been coming up with other people on my podcast as well. I get messages afterwards so something that, how do I explain this? So she wanted to talk about how, like, the way that these stories are captured in a podcast, it kind of feels like they're frozen or like captured, right? Like permanently as an official record. And Kimberly wanted to discuss or explore or have me remind everybody about the nuance of choices and the results that it had on her family. I think so much of my goal of the podcast is to explore that nuance, that no one in Kimberly's story is a good guy or a bad guy. I want to add to that. Also, I think Kimberly is really hard on herself about the struggles that her daughter has experienced through her adolescence. And I think it's okay for me to say there's no real way to know where all her challenges came from. But to me, listening to that story, And to me, as an NPE, and to me, as a licensed marriage and family therapist, it's not a clear cause and effect story, the way that I heard it. These things are so complex. People were young and they were doing the best they could. And now they're muddling through the consequences. It is not black and white. If you want to hear more stories with me, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast on your platform. Follow along on social media. Of course, we're on Instagram and Facebook as Everything's Relative Podcast. And if you are feeling extremely generous and you want to support this struggling operation, head on over to Patreon to commit to supporting us for as little as $1 a month. Next week is another important episode. I'm very excited. Thanks for hanging in there with me through the hot, hot summer. If you want to contact me, eve@everythingsrelativepodcast.com is the way to do it. Keep cool out there. Wear your sunscreen. Eat your vegetables. I'm Eve Sturgis. This is Everything's Relative. Bye-bye.
Everything's Relative with Eve Sturgis is produced by Kaylin Egan and Eve Sturgis. Eve is a licensed therapist in the state of California, but conversations on this podcast are not therapy sessions. This podcast is edited by Stephanie DeLon-Zick, the logo design is by Ivy McNally, and the music is used with permission by Goodbye the Band.
Have you ever encountered an unexplained hairy bipedal hominid in the woods?
Have you received telepathic messages from an unidentified aerial phenomenon?
If so, then you need to listen to Bigfoot Collectors Club. I'm Michael McMillan.
And I'm Bryce Johnson.
And together with super producer
Riley Bray,
we make up the Bigfoot Collectors Club.
That's right. Every week we talk to actors, comedians, writers, and paranormal experts about their personal paranormal histories and share stories of high strangeness.
Like the time when we talked to Craig Ferguson about the Loch Ness Monster and when a sea witch told him he had raven magic.
Or the time I asked Pitch Perfect's Anna Camp her opinion on cattle mutilations. Past guests have included Rachel Bloom, Jen Kirkman, Paul F. Tompkins, Bobcat Goldthwait, and more.
So if you've ever been abducted alongside 5 reindeer by an alien with drills for hands or witnessed Bigfoot crawl out of an interdimensional portal,
Don't laugh, happens all the time.
then check out Bigfoot Collectors Club on Campfire Media or wherever you get your podcasts.
Bigfoot Collectors Club. You're here to believe us.
wait, is that how it goes?
Campfire.